This mine.
Yes, big White Hunter over there.
Same things.
Doesn't you have gift box?
I can tell you what's that.
One judge can eat or something.
I was.
That 1 acre lot.
Jim Wright, you know Jim Wright?
Yeah, he's gonna use it like that.
He's
He
bought
said,
some
I don't have my.
land off there. They have to. It's set up there.
All right, 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is the pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll review and approve the minutes. Before we get moving in the meeting tonight, we have a lot of feedback from the public after the last couple of meetings about the inability to hear folks participating, whether it's at the board level or you folks in the audience. So we're going to ask for strict adherence to one person talking at a time. I know that's difficult for some folks in the room more than others. Thank you. One person at a time, please. And then if you are in the audience, when you first speak, just identify yourself for the record, which will then get caught into the audio, and then do your best to speak up.
Oh, because it's the feed that you have.
Folks that are observing, and then that's our recorded record of the meeting now,
Okay.
to the in-house. So if we could do that, if you're going to speak, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, review and approve the minutes of November 17th. So moved.
Seconded. Should I vote on these? I wasn't here.
I would probably say that is for you to decide.
Yeah,
Motion and second, any further discussion?
I will abstain from voting since I didn't attend that meeting.
Okay, all those in favor? Members report, Charlotte, we'll start with you.
No, got nothing.
I have come. I have dental work done. I had someone ask me about whether or not the school is going to allow people to do the pickleball inside the gym again. And I said, I didn't know. So if school is not going to let people do that inside, can we see if Mercer would be willing to let them do that at the community center? We can loan them our nets and stuff.
I'm sure that the school will allow pickleball with the same guidelines that's in place for regular rec.
They will.
So I'll reach out to the school and put on the books if that can be asked for a program.
Nice timing on that dental work, by the way.
It's at 2:45. Thank you very much.
Good meeting. I'm good. All right, I'm good as well. We'll move right into the town manager's report.
All right, if you didn't notice anything different, you're not very observant. Our interior wall repair and painting began yesterday. And we appreciate your understanding as the office is blown up, especially when you come into the building. As we make our way through the project, we're doing our best that we can to be reasonable and patient with the contractor. As we know, there's going to be a lot of nights and weekends involved, and they're working around us at a favorable price. So your nomination papers are available now, due back by January 6th. Also accepted nominations for Spirit of America and the town report dedication. Please get that to me. We've got slim pickings so far on the list. So if anybody, whether it's on the board or the public, has an idea for either of those, please let me know. Cemetery committee is scheduled to meet tomorrow to work on its budget, as well as to consider a priority list for maintenance, short-term, long-term, and then possible revisions to the cemetery ordinance. Right now, there are only a couple of minor changes, but ones that very likely will seek to have reviewed at town meeting. The other ordinance, just by way of that discussion, is the sewer ordinance. In order to correct the staggered terms in the original ordinance when it was first passed, the language was not properly written, so it's not appropriately staggered. Anyway, we'll probably look to have that changed as well, but that'll be at your next couple of meetings. The planning board is going to meet next week. Right now on the agenda is their 2022 budget request, and also a request from a board member for the board to consider a solar development moratorium. Nothing has been decided. It's just an individual member bringing that forward now, but they will hear that out next week and understand that if they want to move on that, they're going to have to move pretty expeditiously in order to get that back to you and onto the warrant for town meeting. But it's happening all over the state, and so there are samples that are out there for us that if we wanted to do that, that we could move ahead with that and be comfortable with the product that would put the moratorium on it for the short term. As you've probably already heard, the state's purchase of the Madison branch of the rail corridor closed last week. That has been a long time in coming, and it's going to be a good thing for us on the whole. We had We were the only community that was asked to be a part of the state's press release, which was good. And then we were also asked for interviews with Channel 7 and 22 this morning. So we took them downtown and talked about the economic impact here in the community and in the region. So that should be airing probably right about now, and hopefully that'll be a good thing for our downtown. You know, it's real estate, it's vacant space, it's residential, it has the potential to be commercial. There's just so many moving parts and pieces there. So we're going to continue to keep a close eye on that. And Brad's been very good in communicating that with us, as well as Brian Bronson. So, you know, we've got two good ins there in terms of seeing this through. It's going to have a big impact on us. So the two major items of concern, though, about the rail trail are New Balance parking and then the access over the river being the trestles. So the state's agreed to keep us in the loop on both. We've been in communication with New Balance already about that. I took a call with them Monday morning to let them know there was going to be a press release come. And not to be blindsided that the state already had that in their queue, and it's going to be something that we're going to help manage through. So everything seems to be so far so good with that. And right now, the estimated time frame to completion, if everything goes perfect, is no more than 24 months. So won't see anything major happen until spring. Over to the library, the trustees met. They have their own separate pool of ARPA funds. It's only $3,000 that came by way of the state library. And they are looking at potentially purchasing video recording equipment that they can use to restart their story time and enhance other programming opportunities. So they wouldn't have to be, they're going to come in here on Friday and do a read aloud with Barb Winslow for her Kennebec Rising, I believe it is, book. And then we can put that on YouTube, stream that online. This would allow the library to go wherever they want it to be able to do anything like that, whether it's to the woods or whatnot, and share that online. So they're going to be considering that at their special meeting next week outside of the regular schedule. We're going to look at that, and then also next year's budget proposal for them. Your holiday stroll, December 11th. We've had a lot of positive response on that as well. A lot of folks participating in the decorating. Even if you aren't reporting yourself as somebody decorating, if you see a neighbor or something that's decorating that you think would be nice, we're going to put out a Google Maps if you're able to pull it up on your phone and drive around town on the most efficient loops so that you'd be able to see light displays. And so that just kind of grew off as a tangent in terms of those that were participating and taking advantage of just having that database. So if you have any addresses, share them with us. I think it's going to be great. Again, a lot of positive feedback on that. And for a small town, we've got quite a few displays going on so far. Main Street's really stepped it up. The Santa Claus flying I hear. And then our greenhouse has bought more wreaths and more lights. And it's just, that's a nice classy display. So over to public safety, working on NIMS compliance. That's your incident management compliance. So that we're better positioned to apply for grants. That's one of those things that we have to be in compliance with. I'm missing one course now. I was missing 5 or 6. So over the last couple of weeks, I've finished those. I've got my certificates. And then the last one that I have to have is supposed to be in-person training, which would then allow us to apply to purchase generators for emergency facilities. So here's the town office, but it's also our emergency operations center for FEMA grant purposes. And then the public works garage would also be eligible as well. So that's like a 50% subsidy potential for generators to come from FEMA. So we are not eligible for that if I'm not NIMS compliant. So there's an Aroostook County EMA course next week after, and COVID is going to allow us to take that remotely. So we should be all on the up and up with that, and opening up new doors for smaller, wider priorities there. You have the road committee in the House tonight who met yesterday and had a productive discussion about what they'd like to see done for road work next year, in the year after, and probably even the year after that. We are imagining that a lot of these price tags are going to be steep. And they also understand that we need to see things through. So if we start something, we want to finish it. And if that means we're going to do it all at once or do it over the course of 2 or 3 years, we want to stick to it. And that was one of the big things that came out of yesterday. They came out with their loose priority list of what projects they'd like to see. And now they've tasked us with going back, trying to fix our estimates to the projects. And then that might bump around one thing or another, depending if you're going to split a project 2 years instead of 1 or whatnot. They also want to work towards improving multiple roads at the same time, if that's possible, rather than just throwing all of the money over here. If we can both at least split into 2 reasonable phases, then that might meet the needs better of the community. So good discussion, but we don't have anything for you. You won't have anything there until your meeting in January. For a road recommendation. The after item on that is that the committee did unanimously vote to recommend the removal of the speed table on Upper Main Street. They also spent time discussing the new tables that were installed on Depot Street, and respectfully request that any future consideration like that be given to them. For the terms of discussion, but they do applaud the location. It met, a criteria that demanded that in their view, and then that is the appropriate point of installation of speed tables in the town. So that's where I'm at. You can see the slate of meetings there, and that's what I got.
So in regards to that, like where the committee unanimously voted to do that, what do we do next? Like, do we then vote to remove them? Like, how does that work?
We probably have a discussion about it. Where that would go. We'll probably slate that for our next agenda possibly.
We're gonna come kick your knees again.
Uh,
I'm gonna come kick you in the knee.
it's good that you come in, sure, yeah, yeah. We're a member down. See you, man. But moving on, I guess, discussion action on general warrant number 23.
We approved general warrants for $30,285.82.
Second.
Motion second, any further discussion? Short circuit.
That was the concrete bases and the lamp pole installation, and trying to repair what he could repair in the other ones downtown.
Is that for the two lights or is that a series of?
No, that's the 2 lights installation. We also had to repair the concrete bases, so he covered the overhead on that, which we got through L&W. And then he also went out as a part of that to try to get as many of the street lights working, the decorative street lamps working at the same time. So we got about half of them going.
Just looks like a pretty big hit there for.
It is a very big hit. Yep.
2 expensive lights all the way around.
Almost. Is the Harris computer system, is that a quarterly?
No, that's a periodic. So that is one.
I can feel my tongue.
Pardon? So that is, I didn't get a chance to review this. I'm pretty sure it has to do with our upgrades in the web system that we have in the cloud storage of our data. But the Harris computer is what we have for Trio in-house. You might hear that from time to time. The total bill on that throughout the course of the year is about $16,000. But that's pretty much our municipal operating system.
So is that not like a fixed amount?
So that is a prorated amount for a part of the year. But the whole pack itself, I think, is $2,000 for the remote host.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none. Oh,
You know.
all those in favor?
Okay. That's for a second.
All right, public comment.
Hi.
Seeing now.
No, I'm here as a road committee. We're here tonight just to answer any questions. No, first of all, to answer any questions you may have about what our plans were for the roads and why we're doing it in 2 parts. It's because we're trying to keep the costs sustainable to stay away from engineering costs that sometimes get overwhelming, and then we have to do projects that, we're trying to take these projects that would eat up more budget up for one section and get more done on a yearly basis over more areas. So that's what we're trying to do. That's why we're not really have nothing in paper for you tonight, but that's why you're waiting there. Secondly, we recommended the taking out of that. And as a committee, we feel that we did this the first time. The first time this was approached years back when you put it in, we made the same recommendation as a committee and you overlooked it. And it is to my understanding that most of the committees that are helping you out in this town, when they make a recommendation, more often than not, the recommendation goes sweeping through as a board, it gets pushed through easily. For some reason, this one here did not. And it was squeaky wheel, get the grease type of thing, but not a majority, and it was not well thought out, I believe, because of the way that it went through with 3 entities saying they didn't think it was right. you took it upon yourself to vote it in anyways to appease the people of Upper Main Street without further discussion from the people of, that it truly affects as much as the Upper Main Street population. The population of Winding Hill never once was even addressed that this was being even thought of until it was already written in stone that it was going to happen. So I believe that the whole process to put that in there was flawed. And I would like to think that we could do better. And as a committee, we feel slighted that you don't necessarily, you want us to do a job. And when we come up with a recommendation, other than if you have a concrete reason as to why to not take our recommendation, that's fine. But the reason you didn't do it there, you never had a concrete reason to do so other than quieting a certain small portion of people on that street. So that is why we're here. And I would, you know, as a committee, we try to do our best to help you with what to do. I mean, we're not perfect in these roads and everybody has their opinions on the roads. We're just trying to do the best we can. Everybody thinks that there's this huge budget to be used for the roads. But when you're looking at the actual money, well, you don't get much time for your money. So we are trying to be responsible and spend it wisely.
Excellent.
Well said, Mike. Thank you.
Very well said.
You didn't swear once, Richard. See, I can do that.
I totally agree. I mean, for my,
Out of this discussion, I want to know on your next selectmen's meeting, is this going to be an article to be discussed or not?
The speed bump,
Right,
should be slated for our next agenda, yeah.
okay, because I mean,
It'll be a discussion, I can't guarantee you a vote, but there will be a discussion amongst the board.
it's bouncing all over the place and nothing's getting resolved,
Was that it?
That's it, done.
Okay, any other public comment? Okay, seeing none. Discussion action on ARPA project proposals.
All right, so we have the proposals from last time, which included turnout gear, automated fire hose washer, repeater equipment. Do you need that paperwork copy? Good, just underneath there. Then we had the admin for the town request, which was surge wage for employee, enclosed cargo trailer. Library was city outdoor classroom pavilion. The Grange submitted the request for driveway re-gravel and eve repair. Since then, we've received kind of a joint request from the rec department seeking purchase of new bleachers for the athletic fields, which would be appropriate to have the chain link surround as the most recent ones that we purchased have. That's favorable with our insurance company. If we were to buy 4 3-row bleachers, the cost delivered to us is $16,200. And that price elevates because of the freight. So it goes from say $3,500 up based on that. And I do have that in a written quote. We had consideration of an ice skating rink with a possible location of at the ball fields with a very loose project estimate of $10,000 to $15,000 if using concrete. An outdoor walking area near the athletic fields. There is no preliminary cost estimate here. There was a member of the TIF committee that had estimated that if it was paved and accessible all the way around the field, the cost would be nearly $200,000. With that cost estimate, we steered away from that. Public Works has been out just kind of chipping away at that kind of trail out and about so that you would still have that without the cost of it. You know, cut it out, get that underbrush done, and then if we wanted to bring wood chips in or something like that, we could line the path with it and accomplish the same thing for about 200 instead of 200,000. So that was an idea that came through though today, or on today's agenda. Surveillance cameras in Sula Park, that came up again for the purposes of protecting future development and asset protection in general. The effective surveillance system has a budgetary estimate of $1,500. In order to remain effective, it would likely need the structure that we've talked about previously to house the base as well as electrical. And budgetary estimate on that would be $6,000 for say a portable structure like an armor structure, and a budgetary of $1,500 for the utility hookup. We also have a request for upgraded swings at Usula Park. The condition of the existing ones is poor, and it's a relatively small cost in the grand scheme of things. Estimating 10 swings, $50 a piece to replace the actual belt. If you want a child seat, it's $80. Coated chain is $45 per swing. I also looked into the addition of mulch. We get a lot of mulch in the park since I've been here, and that's really just a maintenance thing.
We can give you that for free. We've got a ton of like the playground stuff is just sitting there.
Okay,
Just let us know.
so if we get an offer like that from a small business that's not solicited, then that would be grand. Other than that, the cost estimate is the ballpark $2,500 to do that entire approximate 9,000 square foot play area. Both of the communications from rec endorsed the idea of the public swimming area and the potential for a changing area / bathroom building there. Cost estimates are outstanding with the dock system right now. We've had some design shifts or whatnot, but I have been able to get the cost of marking out the area that the state does prescribe. That's just shy of $3,000 for the buoys, the ropes, the chain, and the anchor system. So we have that, and then we also had a relatively generic request for consideration of broadband expansion into the Bigelow Hill Road neighborhood. I did respond to that at length in writing to talk about what we're doing right now with Charter Spectrum up on Beach Hill, not wanting to rush into it, the cooperative effort with the county, and then also the infusion is to come from the federal government, the infrastructure plan that passed. It's going to probably throw hundreds of millions of dollars into the state for broadband. So whether it's the most effective use of local dollars this time, I didn't think so. So that's been communicated back, but I did tell, that came from a resident as a result of the newsletter that went out this week that's in your box. That encouraged folks to go to the website, come up with qualified expenses and, you know, bounce them off of us, send them in. So we have the 2 rounds, mind you. So even if something might not be approved in this round, there's another pool coming next June. So just to kind of give you that idea.
So total again?
The initial request from the last meeting was in the ballpark of 170,000.
So what's the total from the ARPA?
174,000
times 2?
Yeah. So my recommendation would be in terms of timing and to allow ideas to be fleshed out. We know it's very difficult to get cost estimates right now. So if the resident comes in with something and we need to put a cost estimate to it, the rec comes in and we need to put a cost estimate to it, it's not always easy. We really need to have, I think, a firm deadline of your January 5th meeting. That then allows us to review the first round and then put in your a written submission to the town report. So for the total package recommendation at town meeting, that's what every last thing needs to be reviewed. Is the drop dead deadline. I think we want to include the project list and estimated costs associated with each.
Right.
Yeah.
On that, the re-graveling of the Grange Hall parking lot. I have a couple ideas that I'd like to shoot by you as far as maybe doing something. We graveled that, I want to say 12 years ago, we fixed the pothole. That hasn't had a thing done since then. Since then, Mike Witham been getting some of that recycled, not recycled, 3/4 inch blend ledge mix from Witham's, and it has been holding up incredibly well. And I can't imagine it would take more than a couple good loads to do that, maybe a third. And I would be willing to help with the cost. I would help with that project to put that down, because I think if we fixed it with something like that, it would be, you know, a lot longer lifespan for it. I mean, gravel's good, you know, but I think that stuff is one step better. And DMO Landscaping would be willing to be on the hook to help out with that for the Grange.
But Mike, does that compact and hold together as well as wrap?
But I can show you places where we put it down, and it far and away blows away my, one of the surface gravel. Our surface gravel is good, but this stuff is like one better. And if you put it down, we've been putting it down, finding a lot of success. We've got that 5-ton roller now, put it in place, and if it's not wet, maybe wet it down as you're rolling it. And yeah, it doesn't separate, nowhere near the gravel. Like
Doesn't
that.
have any fines in it. so
Yeah, it's
better than reclaimed asphalt pavement.
depending on the, well, I think the only problem is with reclaim is that it depends on where you get it from, as to the quality of reclaim. So we've had better consistency with that, and it works very well. And it does have a lot of fines in it, because the jaw fines in the 3/4 are just coming off the same belt. So, and we put it down with that roller, and I could show you a few guys.
Yeah, I just haven't really been.
Amazing.
Done the doors for that.
But that would be springtime before it definitely.
And that's what it's gonna look like gravel, right?
It's, no, it's actually, it's the slate roof.
It's like, but it still would look.
It's still a gravel,
historic.
it's a ground, it's not, it doesn't pack like hot top, but it
Yeah.
packs better than, but
It
it's a
just
slate.
doesn't look like a modern product, it still looks like it could be, because it's like.
It has a slate blue color, that's all I can tell you, is it's a crushed, it's a 3 inch crushed gravel that appears slate blue. I don't see the color here.
Actually, it was right on, okay.
So that is not a time request that came from the Grange itself.
Isn't that what I heard?
You got it. So it's been submitted to the town for consideration, but if you want to partner with them in this, maybe work with Becky or somebody else from the
Okay.
Grange.
Yeah.
And then come back to the next meeting if there's a gap in funding, then maybe that could happen.
Because I think that a couple of us could get together as contractors and do that pretty economically for two, a couple, if a couple work together, it could happen pretty easy. And it wouldn't be a lot of cost for anybody to really incur.
The Grange does not have any money to put into this.
Well,
project. That's why we went after.
that's why I'm
Yeah.
offering up
Right.
a solution. I think the solution will be a more permanent solution, and I'll do a little kicking in the knees of somebody else. See if I can get a little help with that.
So again, if you just stay with her and then.
Yeah,
just-
Proposal. I'll be in touch with
Back.
you on that. We'll see what we can do. Okay,
Thank you.
yeah,
All right, so with all proposals here, right, I think we've decided essentially to let 90% go to the public. That's how we're gonna spend those funds with our breakdown. Essentially, the only thing we want to push through and get moving right now is the turnout year. If it's still, is that a pleasure of the board?
Yeah.
Everything else, I do think all of these are great projects. The ice skating rink is actually a really interesting idea. I never even thought of that, and that has great potential. So yeah, I mean, I really like everything we have, and hopefully we do see a few more. But essentially for right now, with the time constraints and with our earlier meeting and talking about the time it takes to get the turnout here, I think that's really the only thing we want to push through.
I think the bigger factor with that would be your cost savings.
Yeah, well, right, yes.
Yes, the price increase the first of the year.
The only thing that I didn't see on here was that I had sent in that email to you was the food pantry and potentially doing that in congruence with this, something with the Grange, if they were amenable to having that, something that, if we can try to figure out how to make the funds work in a dual purpose.
Right, so because of the time of the receipt and the fact that it involves another organization, who's already got a request, it probably doesn't want to prioritize another request over one of their initial requests. I didn't think it was necessarily timeless opportunity for that.
And as
But
well
it
as
will be
this-
approached before the end of the year to get an idea as to whether or not that's money that is going to be received or not, or remotely considered.
And we have another group working on a regional food pantry, so that's
With you?
kind of, it's work, yes,
Okay.
so
I didn't know that we had anything like that going on.
a lot in the works on that.
It's county-based Somerset Public Health. It's
Okay.
got a grant, a nice grant from Good Shepherd. Laura Pinio is actually the coordinator of all of it.
Okay.
And I'm on it. I'm on it.
Is she?
Yeah, and I'm on the committee.
Okay.
You know,
I didn't know we had anything, so that was sort of like a,
Really great potential.
Perfect.
So,
as long as we have that kind of base covered for people, I think that's fine. It just seemed like those funds were like really specifically, the verbiage. This is the type of help that an aid was supposed to supply, so I just want to make sure we check that box, and if we've got that covered, then I'm good.
So if we make a decision on what we want to fund on this, it still goes to town meeting to be approved.
So if the pleasure is to authorize the purchase of turnout gear now, there's a chance, as the fire department understands, that it does not get approved and that ends up coming out of the equipment account.
So we've got funding in that account to buy that now, so we can get the savings, and then we'd replenish that account.
Correct.
After that's approved, if it's approved.
Correct, but there's risk that's understood, right? It's not ideal, but understood. That,
So are there any other items on this list that are that time sensitive? Well, I'm just thinking the Grange project is something that's going to be done, but you don't have a fund to reimburse that way for town
We
meeting.
don't have anything after we do that.
Right,
This is
right.
necessary.
But unfortunately, the town doesn't have an equipment fund or a construction fund for the Grange, so we have to wait on that one.
We do now.
I do have a, can I ask a question now? About the community food cupboard, where is that gonna be located?
nobody knows yet, and it may be multiple locations throughout Somerset County. It could just be one big one in central Somerset, could be one big one here. We don't know yet. It's still in the working phases. The working group is developing. I mean, it's been 5 or 6 months of developing the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threat of Somerset County needed food needs. And so we know that we have a need here in our community for that service. And so we're working cooperatively with probably a dozen representatives from the county, not within the county, not at the county level, to figure out what might be best and how that would play out. And it could be something brick and mortar, it could be something that's very small brick and mortar and mobile, and it could be something that's wholly mobile. Could be something that's completely private, it could be something that's public-private partnership, or it could just be something that's completely public organization. But that's, I think, another 6 or 7 months before anything really formidable
And will they
starts.
approach people like the Grange?
Potentially. There's a lot of funding that I'll say like the Grange, yes. It'll be very different because of the nature of the 501s, and not everyone's a 501c3. And so those will have a lot of implications there, because then whether it's a large funding partner that supports general public health that we see at a place like Norridgewock, they'll want only to give to a 501c3. So there'll be those kind of considerations as well, and those players are at the table in terms of guiding.
So is there an interest of the Grange, or I don't know?
Right.
Maybe.
What did you say?
Is there an interest at the Grange, maybe?
The Grange would definitely like to have a partner.
Okay.
So the community center makes sense, particularly that location. It's excellent. People going to the school. You know, so many families and everything going by that building all the time. It just makes sense.
So for a food cupboard, we have one currently, in theory.
Yeah.
Is that a situation where there are 3 or 4 freezers and dry goods, and those goods are stored there long-term and get replenished? So storage, refrigerator, freezer space? I don't know.
Yes, no, there are probably 4 or 5 freezer refrigerators,
Okay.
mostly just household.
So
That's there.
logistically, you'd have to have that type of support in order to have something like that.
Right, and that's one of the things that we're trying to work out, is that could you just have a small portion allocated to the food need, and then have a centralized location for distribution where they have all of that stuff. And then you would only have 1 refrigerator and freezer in house to be able to handle Tuesdays.
Sure.
Okay. Those are the things that they're weighing out, and you could get a van and delivery, and it's all really about the scope of it and cost effectiveness, and everything's going regional. So,
If you would do mobile, where does that money come from after a mobile van? Sounds silly.
so we have large corporate partners,
Mhm.
that support this. Good Shepherd Food Bank, anything that's vegetable, fruit and vegetable is free. You can have as much of it as you want. They'll just deliver, you have to take a pallet of it to a time. That's free. And then it comes from tax support and private donations. I mean, the town used to be an avid supporter of the food cupboard. Large corporate partners used to be as well. We have a couple private people that give us monthly checks. And I think if folks saw that there was an effective organization that would get that out there, you'd have a lot more people that would contribute to it.
Hopefully we can get it knocked out, really. That would be the big win for us.
I mean, we used to be the county seat when things first started.
Come on.
But we do have a designated account that is set aside, I don't know if it's got $10,000 in it ballpark, but it's just been money that people have donated since, in the last probably 2 years, that's it. That we've accumulated $10,000 in donations. Of course, half of it was one donation, but nonetheless, it was the gift to try to get us motivated to talk about community food needs and things like that.
Thanks, thank you.
Okay, so as far as that goes, does the fire department need anything official as far as a motion to go ahead and move with that?
The price is over 5,000.
Right, so they will need an official motion.
Yeah, and as a part of it, the request from the department would seek to waive the formal bid process and select the one vendor that would provide the stock program that they had described at the last meeting. Also knowing that it was locally, relatively locally selected.
Was that like a so moved motion?
So I move that we waive the normal process of the bid selection and approve the fire department moving forward with the purchase of the turnout gear for the firefighters in the amount of $69,000,
Up to,
up to $69,000.
well, if it's 67, you got 2 more thousand to work with on
So moved.
some other.
They will have asked me.
There's no other funding available at this point.
That's not yet.
I'll second that.
The motion and a second, any further discussion?
Is that the only one that we're going to do? We're not going to.
I think as a board, I think we decided that.
The only one
I think
that
we should put on the ice rink
can
too.
legally do, because they have the funding to do it right now.
No,
Too many unknowns.
only the size.
My father flooded the tennis courts 35 years ago.
Right?
He and Ronnie Henry used to, remember?
But not
Everybody
too
wants
far
to-
back, no, sorry. This is a motion and a second
That was what, 35 years
to
ago?
go with.
One at a time. Michael?
Okay, there's a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. All those in favor? Unanimous. Right, discussion, well, you don't know, on that budget, do we? Any reason to touch on that?
Not unless anybody has, I mean, does the road committee's here? Do you want to kind of glaze over, or do you want to wait in terms of what you're
Do
looking
you
at?
want to know what we're looking at?
Don't say Wilder Hill, I'm gonna choke you up. right?
Yeah, I do, yeah. So we'll- yeah.
Okay, we discussed that last night. The biggest issue with Wilder Hill is, we did discuss that yesterday afternoon. But there is a plan somewhere on file that they had to engineer that one short stretch of road. And way back when we were going to address it, I believe it was tied into the contingency with the fire department going out there. And we were gonna try to incorporate all water problems with your project.
Mhm.
And then I think when you guys move down here, it becomes that short stretch of the road, and it is not, don't take this wrong, but it becomes very costly to do that and provide proper drainage for that short stretch of road. So it's a cost-effective measure right now. We're having a hard time coming up with the money for 300 yards.
That's the problem.
Yes, and that's because the rest of it's in decent shape, but it's just, it's the watershed there. Richard spoke of maybe cutting trees and set the road over a little bit and trying to do something more with that, you know, because there is all that land is available and it's not being occupied by the cemetery at this time. So that was one idea, but the only, again, part of the problem is there's no elevation drop until you get down over the hill. So even if you said, what are you gonna do with the wall? So we're gonna have to run it somewhere. And that was Gary asked to somehow dig out the plans, and we are gonna at least readdress it. But he wants to see the plans on it. I don't think it's been.
Yes, I'm Gary Violet. We spoke last night at the meeting that that's been designed, like Mike said, but there's a section of it that was designed to work in consideration with the
Right.
fire department that didn't go over there, so. I'd like to offer, Rich, if you wanna pull those plans out, give me a call and I'll come down and look at them, and if we need be, we can get Dirigo to just redesign that section that was designed to help with that project and utilize the rest of the plans from there. So.
Because there are plans drawn up. We just don't, it's been a while.
We're trying to get away from paying a lot of money for engineering services that, because of the work we've done in the past, and Joe's so well informed, and he kind of takes over a lot of this stuff, so it's kind of repetitive stuff that we really don't need to be paying for engineering services.
And then anything that we go over $100,000 automatically has to be engineered. So we're trying, like the Burl Hill project, the Burl Hill is probably the worst hot top road that we have in the town, that's our responsibility as of right now. And we discussed to go do all the culvert, do an inspection of all the culverts, do any culvert that needs cross culvert, any culvert that needs to be addressed from 139 to the top of the hill where the new section comes on. Ditching, prepare all the ditches, rip wrap, whatever it takes to get the ditches secure. Joe was saying that he thought there was some places where rocks are coming up through the road because it's all clay up through there, and Mother Nature, and by the time we've not been kind to that road. So address anything like that, dig out whatever we have to, do that as the first stage, patch the holes, let it run a year, see how it holds up. Maybe we have some issues that raise their ugly head that year, and then next year, if everything is good, hire pipe, come in, grind it, shape it, if they need new gravel, whatever, but grind it and pave. And we're hoping that would be better than a total reconstruction bill all in 1 year.
One of the advantages of doing your grading, ditching, culverting, and let it go through a season of travel and a frost thaw situation, then your little bumps and stuff that show up in the pavement the next year, if you try to do all your earthwork and pave it right then, you don't have the luxury on a lot of these bigger roads, but there's some advantage to let that traffic run on it and let it settle in, then come back and regrade it and reshape it and re-roll it and then pave it. But we're also trying to kind of get away from, like we did on the Father Rawls Road 15 years ago, is put the base pavement down, which is 2 inches, then your finish is usually 1.5 inches, a total of 3.5. But we don't go back and resurface them, so now that's down there is trash, that needs to be reground and shaped. I never really liked that system of paving and then come back 5 or 6 or 10 years later. One of the big advantages to paving both systems, both layers at the same time, is that you've got, you put your base down, you got a non-contaminated surface. There's been no oil on it, there's been no salt on it, that put your finish layer right on then and walk away and should be good for 30 years. The problem is, if I like the Father Rawls Road, it's all cracked down there now. And the problem when you get cracks and you put your road sand on it, all those fines infiltrate in the cracks and contaminate your base gravel. So it's a multitude of problems by just putting the base down and walking off and thinking you're gonna go back in 5 years, which we never did. Now that road's gonna need to be completely, at a minimum, completely reground and graded and shaped and rolled, then paved. So we're basically tearing up what we did 15 years ago. So we're trying to get away from the put the base down system and come back later.
And there lies the problem with money that we have,
Right.
There's where the money problem is that.
Right. But then if you can pull it off in a 2-year thing with all your grading and shaping and culverting, do that one year, let it go a winter, then come back in and hit it hard with both layers of pavement and you're done.
That makes sense, it seems.
So that's part of the discussion was last night. We had some really good discussions last night, and what we need right now, like Mike stated, is to get some prices together, find out what this is gonna cost to do the culverts and grading and shaping, And then find out what's gonna cost to do 2 layers in the season, which is gonna be kind of hard to pull off because prices change so much, but
We could
if
get
we
a
got,
ballpark.
if we get a ballpark idea of what's gonna cost to do these things, then we can make our decisions accordingly.
Because we did well last year by, again, like Gary said, we had not done well by, our goal was to get rid of all gravel roads. The discussion is the Walker Road. The Walker Road, nobody really wants to go up and hot top it, but we did engineer it and build it with the understanding that it was gonna be paved in the future. Well, it's a long time in the future, and we're at a point where Joe was saying yesterday that we're starting to spend. It's at a point where it's gonna go the other way on us, and we're gonna have to spend more money to get it back to a pavement. So do we bite the bullet and pave it? We always intended to pave it, we just have never been back, because we're always short on money. It seems like the Borough Hill Road is horrible. And we could chew up 2 years worth of budget probably fixing that road. to where
See, the Walker Road, that grading and ditching is held up well, so it's shaped well.
Mhm.
So we wouldn't need to, we could just go down through there and regrade that, shape it, roll it, and put 2 lifts of pavement on it and be done with that. So that road right there, we're trying to do in 1 year because the prep work is so minimal, because it's in such good shape now that grade that, roll it, that's been drove on and pounded for 10 years.
Yeah, I believe it's 10 years.
So a good shaping and paving on that will be right, we'll be in business with that one and can walk away from.
And the reason, and the discussion we had back when we built that road was really to build it with hot top in mind soon. But because it's in so much better shape than it ever was, it gets overlooked because, oh, you guys can run up there with the grader and grading.
We got paved roads in town that don't ride as good as that gravel road.
Yes, and our whole point, Doug Farron 25 years ago tried to get a bond together to do one big sweeping road bill and get everything done. And it was a big number and it just didn't fly well. But the whole goal is to basically get rid of gravel roads to maintain, because they cost so much more to maintain per mile.
Yeah, if you shape and gravel and compact that road, put 2 lifts of pavement on there, the way that's held up, the ditching's so good, the crown's good. That's gonna be a maintenance-free road for quite a few years if we can pull this off.
But there again, it's what we're working, I think you said we had 6:30.
Yeah.
Ish, 6:30 is where we're sitting right now. But, so we're trying to do as much as possible from Borough Hill Road without engineering, and if we could do it in 2 stages like that, because do we have to have it, if we would have that already, if Pike said they would grind that and pave it, it was over $100,000 to do so, do we have to, the engineering tag doesn't have to go on that then, does it? Because it's not
If it was a reconstruction, you would have to, but we're
a
not.
regrind, but a grind,
No.
a grind.
That's just shaping and compact.
Right, so even if that was a big number next year, it doesn't sound like we're gonna have to put that out to an engineering service if we've taken care of all the structural problems, address those prior to. So,
One good thing, we got all these engineered plans, I'm sure you've got them stored places, so they all have details on them.
well, he's retired engineer.
They all have details on culverts, okay, this is what we do, this is how we do this, and this is how we rip wrap, so to pay someone to just repetitively keep doing that, I'm not working anymore, call me up, we'll look through some stuff and,
I'm not paying you.
I'm not.
You only need like an $8 sandwich. It's okay.
I got more money than I know what to do. But no, the standards are the same. You got these plans and you pay someone to redo that culvert detail again or whatever detail again. So we could utilize the stuff we got. Pass it on to Joe so we've got something to see. And so I'm home, call me.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So a quick question, the piece that we rebuilt on Ward Hill, Madison, down to about Red Barn Road. So the other day, I went out through there, it was raining out and the water was running right down the middle of the road. with all of the culvert issues we had and the cross culvert, we had to go back in, and that was kind of a
Right
nightmare.
down the hill.
Right from Madison line, it was kind of right down the middle of the road.
So then you got a grading and compaction problem.
Anyway, something just to keep
Which
an
is
eye
why
on.
you really, I guess I can't keep offering.
You might be
I
busy.
can come out and do the free inspection, I've been doing this for 45 years, I'm not working at, if you got a contractor around, I can like to offer my services to help the town out if you get into a problem, or if you're doing a major road, and want someone to go spot check and make sure they're rolling it properly, and reserve the right to call SW Cole if I don't think the compaction's up to par, and let them test it before you pave. And then you don't have these streams running down, those are the tire tracks.
Right.
That's a
Big trucks.
compaction problem.
Big trucks.
We paid a lot of money for inspections over the years that didn't really turn out to be.
Yes, we did that road.
Most of our engineering didn't seem to be quite so either.
So I think we're on the right track as of right now, is to try to solve as many issues as possible within a budget that doesn't, we don't have to come and say, well, you got a rainy day fund here, we're gonna have to tap into it. We're trying to stay within that. And I know that a lot of people in town, when it comes to town meeting and stuff, and you ask for $630, probably like the same thing the fire department has over the years. It sounds like a lot of money until you try to do something. And then it's kind of discouraging because you go, dang, that didn't work well. So, I mean, we're trying to come up with some avenues in which we can get things accomplished. It just may not be all, like Gary said, all in 1 year.
Yeah. But another thing we discussed was regrinding and shaping that out of the road. And if we're gonna do that, it would make more sense to put a base layer down and walk away again like we did. Put both coats on and be done with it.
But the other thing, we have a little issue with, we have a bigger issue there too as well that we need to address. We're hoping to address that as well, and maybe not, I mean, work it in with what he was saying there, but I mean, there's a bigger issue with that.
That's a great place when we have these drainage issues to get a engineer on board for some under drain designs and that type of stuff. So, but we could kind of, we don't have to have them do the whole road, just if we need a specific thing designed, pay someone to do that, but
If you run into an issue that needs some help, yeah.
you go through your archives, I'm telling you, there's plans you got kicking around here that you go to a different road, you got the same situation. You don't need to redesign that. All that stuff out, see how we did it over there.
Like, no, you guys are definitely on the right track, and I support to have a good plan.
So don't we have a bigger problem on Father All, like it's the river's washing it away?
Did we like try to get grants? It was so bad.
That's the issue that we may not want to, we may try to address that because that work, you would certainly probably like to get that work done prior to
Oh, yeah.
that work. And we're trying to get that tied in. Yes, that work needs to be done first. And then, like he said, he is 100% right with the grinding and regrading and repaving. But the issue you're talking about, yes, it needs to be.
Not gonna wash down the river before we.
Yeah.
Well, and you don't want, you want to do all that work prior to, because you don't want to put that road up and have somebody go back in there and have to see what
We
Curl your
just-
hair before you go stand in the rain. That makes no
We
sense.
discussed that last night also. That needs a sheet piling job. So I was telling Joe, HB Fleming out of Portland, that's all they do. I've worked with them on many dam projects, whatever. You drive some sheet piling in it, but you gotta get an engineer to design that, and you need permitting for that type of stuff. But if you just try to rip wrap that slope, it's too steep, it's gonna, the road, you're gonna be moving the road, so you bite the bullet and drive some sheet piling, it's gonna be expensive. Because you gotta get DEP approval and all that, but it will never go anywhere. HB Fleming just did that store up in Madison, the little, what's that? Put new gas tanks and stuff up there. You see their green and white cranes up there?
Big Apple.
Yeah,
Big Apple and Maps.
so they're a well-known, they'd be the only one that probably would want to do the work. And we're about the only one in the state that really good
But
at it.
it never, stuff like that never comes cheap.
No.
And the problem is-
We saw.
You guys know what sheet piling is? It's the Z shape, and they got a lock, so they lock together, and basically they got so much strength, it will never overturn. And they drive that at a slight angle, and
We also discussed something like that, like the sheet, that piling. that we may want to, if we want to address that, we may come to you and ask you to maybe open up some funds out of the rainy day fund and not take that out of the road fund.
Yeah, well, that's, right, it's an expensive project.
Yes,
I didn't want to get it
and
right.
what we have for money to work with the road project, if you were to attempt that, there would be nothing done with roads that year altogether. So if you, again, gonna have to put it up to the town vote at that point in time, but understand if we were to ask for that, that's where that money, we'd probably try to get that money is in another area.
A rainy day fund.
So Richard, we gotta go through some permitting process before we can even attempt to get any pricing from Fleming or some other company to do that, correct?
Correct. So I
With that-
initiated contract already on that with CES, Haley Ward now.
Yeah.
Because anybody else that we talked to said that it was something that's gonna be probably bigger than just anybody but handle. So they have made their written recommendation to us that that's what they're recommending. And then they're signed on to get us cost estimate and draft plans. And then the next phase will be just
What about the permits?
that.
They're working on
That's after the
that.
plans, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the concern is the length of time. We have the benefit of being a town. We have a pretty good working relationship with DEP. And then just like we did with the boat launch, we had to get into all of that. And that was so smooth. And then it comes to Army Corps, and that's when the brakes get jammed, and then we have to call Augusta. and
Do we have to Army
Bears.
Corps, would that involve Army Corps as well?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus,
Rivers.
I know, and we're in the Kennebec watershed, and that's never an easy project when you're talking
So
about.
we ended up having to, the boat launch, I did pretty much all, they gave us the design, and then I just did permitting myself for DEP, so we ended up having to hire Al Hodgson to come in and push the permitting through on that with Army Corps.
You might have archaeological digs ahead of you.
In fact,
It is right in the areas.
That's one good thing about shoot bylaws.
and I think one of the things when he talks about the rainy day fund, we're talking about surplus, undesignated fund. There are a lot of people that aren't happy with the fact that it's not gonna be done before winter. We also need to be prepared. Realistically, it's probably not gonna be done for next winter either.
Is this about the road project?
Yeah.
So like one house on the other side of that problem, isn't there?
Right, but I don't think that there's gonna be broad support shut road now.
So for all these upset people with this one house on the other side of the
And right,
inconvenience.
look, so I mean, if you want to agenda it, I think best case scenario is that the road gets shut down.
It does actually need to be, let it kind of slip all of our minds, because we do need a fix on that.
Because I asked for it previously, and they didn't have the score.
Right, because you can't apply it now.
And then we might have to work out something with that neighbor right across the street. In terms of them accessing the property.
Yeah, I think
We have to work.
more, I think
with
it's
that.
more.
You know what, you could put a temporary entrance in there, Richard, till they get to that house.
That's what I'm saying. We might have to do that.
Closer to,
I'm having.
Moores, closer to Moores.
Yeah.
We could stick a little temporary driveway up in the end, just kind of disregard the one we have now. Then we'd have that piece of the road to work and she could get in and people can still travel from the other way. It's just emergency vehicles going through is gonna be a problem. You may have to keep an emergency type lane open for fire and ambulance.
Or they can come in the other way and just leave a standing directive on file with dispatch.
Oh,
Essentially, yes, was
It would be a little bit longer, yes, but it would be at least if you knew it going into it.
But it's certainly something that you guys can take a look at, and Richard, and kind of come up with a great solution for this winter.
Yeah, it's gonna be this winter and next, and when we look at the budget, I think what we're gonna be trying to get at is that even if we're not gonna be funding Father Rock, but we probably need to go in and ask for the full funding of an up to whatever fund it comes out of, whether it's operating or contingency, we have to be prepared for that expense.
Right, and not necessarily for my road budget.
Because you will like a road budget
Oh,
or
yes.
two.
Oh, that's not the road either, that's just an structural bank reinforcement.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if you were to ask the road committee, I mean, to take that out of the road budget, Gary, like I said, Gary's, technically, that's really not that's a structure, that's not
Right, yeah.
road, it's,
Out of the scope.
yes, so
It's to save the road, but
you could sell it at that as well.
Right.
So,
Well, you guys are on.
Yeah, no, it was a very productive meeting and
But you know, we're about to quit.
Are you?
Well. You don't like to take what we have to say to you.
We're not listening to the recommendations.
That's why we came here.
I mean, they're giving us free engineering services.
I'm impressed, just so you know.
Anything else? Really, under other business?
I just want to throw this out here. What's happened with the crack seal? Well, on that subject.
yeah, so we signed contract with Fine Line to crack seal early spring. And everything seems to be taking backseat. So they did Ward Hill right out of the gate because we had a striping project that needed to get accomplished. And then what I'm hearing is that they've come in and maybe done an unsatisfactory job in certain areas, and so we've recalled them. And now temperature's the big obstacle to
I'm
that.
a little late for that now.
And so,
Running a little late.
Correct. and so to not talk about contract specific, we're working on that and how to get to be first out of the gate next spring. And have everything remedied the way that we want it. Candidly, the price when we got it was out of this world. I mean, it was just, this can't be the appropriate bid. And, well, everybody did a site tour, so there's no reason for it to be off. So we're working on the contract to make sure that, yeah,
We gotta maintain what we've done.
right,
And that was our biggest, one of our, like we addressed it already, is that we really haven't been good at follow-up. Because, and I think part of that is because the money is never enough to reconstruct here and follow up here. We have limited overlay budget.
What we've been doing is kind of jumping around, trying to appease these people over here, so we go do a little bit, then, but you don't get back there, so we're trying to lean to completing projects more, sticking with one. If it takes 2 years to do it,
Try to get it done properly.
so then we're not crack sealing and
Right,
losing our base and having to regrade and grind and,
right.
well, we're trying.
Good. Thank you, appreciate it.
The Fine Line had a crack sealing machine on Wilder Hill.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
What I saw, I thought they were doing a great job. I thought they were running right through the whole town at one time. I didn't realize they had stopped. But what I had saw looked good.
Was that an Iowa truck?
I didn't inspect it. I just saw the machine.
Yeah, right. I was happy to see it going down. So anything else on other business? Anybody? All right, there's only one thing left here. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? It's everybody. Thank you guys for coming in.
Yes, very well.
No.
Awesome.